He built a 317 store mattress empire spanning 6 states with 1,600 employees. The culture of the company was so strong that he and many of his teammates still reunite 11 years later. Dale Carlsen, the legendary founder of Sleep Train, is here, and the Fan Podcast starts right now.
In the mattress world, a no at checkout means a lost sale. That's where American First Finance comes in. We help you say yes to more customers, even if their credit isn't perfect. With fast setup, tailored solutions, and support every step of the way, you're not just offering a way to pay. You're inviting them to Yesville, where more people get approved and customers can take home the mattress they need today. Visit AmericanFirstFinance.com to get started.
For the first time ever, top retailers can introduce the mattress that's been locked away inside of one of America's top mattress retailers until now. Introducing Prana Sleep, the ultimate luxury mattress collection designed by lifelong sleep industry leaders who set out to create the best sleep experience imaginable at any cost. Born from decades of industry expertise and real-world retail feedback, Prana Sleep doesn't just sell mattresses, it sells satisfaction, loyalty, and premium performance. Now, Prana Sleep is awarding these unparalleled products to a select group of top-tier retailers. Proudly made in the USA, Prana Sleep mattresses are handcrafted in private factories by top-tier craftspeople, ensuring exceptional quality and detail. What sets Prana Sleep apart? 100% natural materials, luxury latex, and the only machines in the world that quilt latex directly into the top panel for a one-of-a-kind, indulgent feel. Stand out in the marketplace with a mattress line engineered for luxury and crafted for those who demand the best. Your competition will hate selling against Prana Sleep because nothing compares. Prana Sleep, bring the secret to success into your stores today. Go to pranasleep.com now to apply. Did you know that 86% of customers buy from the first business that responds? And if you text back very quickly, that number jumps to over 90%. That's why Podium's AI employee, Jerry, is a game changer. Jerry never sleeps, never takes a lunch break, and never puts in a 2-week notice. He's always on, responding in seconds, so you never lose a lead again. Turn missed calls into texts, capture more leads, and close more deals, all with Podium. Want to see how it works? Get a demo today at podium.com/fam. Podium, because speed wins sales.
Welcome to the FAM Podcast with Mark Kinsley. This is where the best in the bedding business get even better.
Welcome to the Fan Podcast. Dale, it is so good to see you. I know you're on the backside of swimming with marine iguanas and hammerhead sharks in the Galapagos, and you've got a great tan. That sounds like quite the adventure.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we had a great time. I'm happy to be here. Excited to talk with you. It's great.
Well, I got to tell you a story about the first time that I saw you, and I was at a mattress conference, and I was a newbie in the industry working for Leggett and Platt. And I think this is before I even came on to do marketing at Leggett and Platt. I remember being at the bedding conference, and we were talking about warranties. And as a new guy, I didn't know a whole lot about warranties and how tumultuous that topic could be. And you stand up when it was a panel of manufacturers, mattress manufacturers, and from some of the biggest brands, and you just took them to task on 20 and 25-year warranties. Do you remember this?
I do. Yeah, it was a pet peeve of mine. It's like, as an industry, I think we were failing ourselves and our customers with long warranties at that time.
So I remember though that eventually led to warranties getting reduced down to a more reasonable level. What was the burr under your saddle with that? Like, did it create a lot of issues with the consumer and the selling process?
Yeah, the expectation, we weren't giving the consumer the right expectation for their product. They were buying a product that had a 25-year warranty that wasn't going to last 25 years. Would it have a manufacturer defect? Yeah, possibly within that, but not within that 25 years. It's not going to last. And they thought it would last 25 years. And we're telling consumers that they should buy a bed every 8 years because their bodies change and other reasons, the product, and yet we're giving them a 25-year warranty. And so we were misleading the consumer, in my opinion, at that time.
So that rant at that conference, I think, led to something that changed the industry. I mean, it eventually did, right?
I pushed that envelope a lot.
Well, I'm sure you pushed a lot of envelopes because you and your team built a company that had 317 stores. If you were in the Bay Area throughout the years, you heard the Sleep Train whistle. You saw a Sleep Train arena in Sacramento. Let's go back a little bit because I'm going to give people a staggering statistic that you shared with me, and it was eventually you created an ESOP where 25% of the ownership of Sleep Train was owned by the employees. And whenever Sleep Train sold to Mattress Firm, the company transferred $117 million to employee owners.
Yep. Yeah, it was one of my proudest things that I accomplished in all those years. I'm fortunate to be married to a wonderful woman who doesn't really care about money or anything like that. She just cares about taking care of the world and taking care of kids. She's a pediatrician, and so we were looking and trying. We had come through, and we were at the recession had hit, and I had started doing research right before the Great Recession hit, and on ESOPs, and as we just got through the initial shock of it all and got things, we decided that, we wanted to make sure that everybody won as we grew this company. And so we gave 25% to the employees so that they could be owners. And that ownership, there's nothing more powerful than the power of ownership. When a salesperson can sit there on the floor and say, I'm an owner. I want to make sure you're taken care of because you are my customer, not just my company's customer. Same with the delivery driver who's putting a bed into a customer's home. But this is my company. I want to make sure you're happy. Are you happy? That made a huge difference. It also made a huge difference in our financials, quite frankly, because by doing this, by giving the power of ownership to the employees, we were able to increase the value of the company from 2010 to 2014 when I sold 800%. 800% increase in value of the company because that ownership mentality skyrocketed our business because they were all owners now, and it mattered. It mattered not only on the sales and the delivery and that side, but it mattered on the financial side because everybody being an owner, they were watching the dollars as if they were theirs because they were their dollars. And so, in the old days when someone might go out to a restaurant, they see another group of our employees out at the restaurant and they know they're just goofing off and having a, meal on the company. These guys would call them out and go, "Hey, you're spending my money now. That's my money." Plus new ideas came because they were owners. So how to make our company better grew out of that because as an owner, you thought differently. You thought about how do I make my company better because it is now my company, not their company.
What happened when you really felt that the employees understood that they were owners? Because you can wave a magic wand and say, here it is, lay it out for everybody. This is your percentage ownership. This is what it means. Was it immediate? Did people start kind of owning those domains?
No, it took a lot of work, quite frankly. How I don't know if you've heard the story of how I told everybody we were doing this, but we used to have a management retreat every year. This year was up in particular year was up in Reno, and I had 300 of my management team all there, and they're all sitting there. And there have been rumors going around for a while that I was going to sell. They'd always ask, "Are you going to sell? Are you going to sell?" And I go, "No, no, I'm not looking to sell. Not looking to sell." So they were all at the retreat, and I sat up there, and I can tend to be a little emotional because I care about my people. I stood up and I said, I have an announcement to make, and it's a serious one. It's something that's very important to all of us in this room. But I've told you I would not sell this company unless I could find, someone that cared about our employees the way I do, someone that cared about the customer the way I do, someone that cared about doing the right thing the way we all do. I finally found somebody, and unfortunately, they couldn't be here all be here to meet you, but they did send you a little something to look at. So on in front of you is a box. If you'll open that box, you'll find out more about who the new owners are. And they opened the box, and it was a mirror looking back at them. And at first, when I was first telling the story that I was selling, quote unquote, there were tears, there was anger, So I'm up front, I'm watching people starting to cry. I'm watching people, mad because I can't believe he's going to do this. And all this emotion was going on. And then they're looking at this mirror and they're going, I don't get it. And I said, it's you. We are going to give you 25% of this company. You're the new owners of this company. So we started with that and then built on that from there. And it took, our meetings were not now employee meetings, they were owner meetings. It was owner awards, an owner of the year, owner of this. They were owner, it was all the conversation. I had a great leader of our HR, Tracy Jackson, and she built a team that did a phenomenal job of rolling this out to everybody, making sure that everybody understood they were owners. We would repeat it over and over and over again in every conversation with our employees so that they fully understood it. And at the end, they understood it. And especially when it all came down, it really helped in the process of the sale, quite frankly, as well, because everybody was winning in that deal. And then post, I got to tell you, Mark, it's one of the best things. I still, to this day, 11 years out, get somebody stopping me, an old employee, saying, I just got to tell you how much you changed my life with that ESOP. I had one guy who, a delivery guy, a great guy, and he was delivering to our house a mattress after the sale and everything. I was getting a new mattress. And he was walking away and he came back and goes, Dale, remember, everybody called me Dale because Mr. Carlsen was my father. I never wanted to be called Mr. Carlsen. I always told him, call me Dale. Mr. Carlsen's my father. So he came back and said, Dale, I got to tell you how much I appreciate what you did for me. My mom is in Mexico. Her roof collapsed on her house, and I was able to buy her a new house because of what you did and what you gave me. Others have come and said how it changed their life. It helped their kids. They did this or that with whatever they got. But it was the most gratifying thing I think I've ever done in my life, was being able to help that many employees that helped me grow a company. So it was special.
Okay. I've heard people say sometimes, if you don't have a vision for your life, somebody else is going to hire you to build their vision. This is such a subtle flip of a switch on that. People had ownership. They were growing this vision together. And when you look at the numbers, like you said, I mean, an 800% increase in the span of 4 years, it doesn't seem possible from the outside looking in.
No, but when you have that ownership mentality, it changes everything. And the culture that we have, quite frankly, our culture of the ownership, the culture that we had a very strong culture, as you mentioned earlier, which I think is so critical for success in any business, is to understand the culture that you want and the culture that you want to really build within your organization.
Just out of curiosity, if you have this in your mind and handy, how many people put $1 million in their pocket
I
or
don't
more?
know the actual number of that. It's spread out amongst all the employees and based on how long they had been there. So different levels at different points got different amount of money. So I kind of leave that personal. I don't want to call out other people and where they're at.
No, I was just saying, like, out of everybody, because if you end up with 1,600 employees and you give away $117 million, you made a lot of millionaires, probably.
There were quite a few.
That's awesome. I love it. I just love stories where everybody wins. It was a win for your employees, for Ticket to Dream. It was a win for so many different families, and that legacy and that lasting impact that continues today. And like that guy that was able to put a roof on his mom's house. There's so many stories out there that you probably never even hear.
Yeah, no, I know it's a great thing to do. I mean, and we were very, very happy to do it, and it was the right thing to do. Is we like to look at doing the right thing, right?
Well, speaking of doing the right thing, I remember another personal story of mine. I was working at Leggett and I was invited to the Sleep Train charity golf tournament to support Ticket to Dream. And so I came out and, I didn't know a whole lot of people, but I was showing up for the Caddyshack theme. And so in advance of it, we made a Caddyshack bag, just like Ronnie Dangerfield's. And then
I remember that.
Yeah, we donated it and then you auction it off. And I remember Rick Anderson with Tempur-Pedic bought it. And I would say for the next 18 months, I was a customer service agent for Rick Anderson's golf bag.
How does this work? How do I make that work, right?
Yeah, it did have the actuator that came up and it actually spit out beer and it had Bluetooth so you could play music, and the clubs did eject with a button, but the club ejection was the huge hit. And that part was, sometimes it was more like bing and sometimes it was shink. So you could never predict like how high it was going to shoot. But I remember showing up to that tournament, Dale, and you were driving around in the Rodney Dangerfield Mercedes Benz golf cart having a blast. But it was such an incredibly well put together event filled with people that were having a blast and huge hearts for this charity, which was to support foster kids and emancipated teens that were aging out of the foster care system. And I remember you talking about how as an organization you used to kind of spread yourself all over the place and support lots of charities, and that was great, but there came a moment when you're like, we really need to focus. Tell us that story and like how you thought about making that decision.
Well, it's hard in every business. You are asked from a variety of different angles. Can you help with this? Can you help with that? And unfortunately, there are so many great organizations that need help that there's an endless amount of people that are going to ask you. But I looked around and said, what matters to me, quite frankly, and what do I think matters to the world? And my wife, as I said, is a pediatrician, right? So our view has always been about kids. And I had done a research project at a group home in when I was in college and got my first exposure to at-risk kids in the system and decided that, I looked around and I said, no one is really talking about this at this time. If you look now, the foster kids is people understand what foster kids are to some degree. It's been talked about. It's in movies. It's in books. It's in back in 87, I think is when we started 86. First started doing stuff for foster kids. 86, I guess I started in 85. So 86, I started doing stuff for foster kids. Nobody talked about foster kids, and yet I looked at it and said, these kids did nothing wrong. They simply had parents that, for one reason or another, could not care for them, and they were put into a system that is so severely broken and not looked at as kids that should be supported. And so when I looked at that, I said, we need to do something here. So we started out with mattresses for kids. It was a simple program where I looked at the beds that were in these places, and they all had the banana, right? They're all just horrible mattresses. I said, we got to change that because these kids' backs are growing at this time, right? They can't be in these banana slings and expect those backs to grow properly. And plus, they need to sleep better in order to get a better education, right? So if I'm going to pitch that sleep is important to us, I need to make sure that these kids that no one was talking about or working with had that. And so I went to the manufacturers and I made a deal with them. I said, okay, hey, you guys want to help people, we want to help people. So I would like to buy 10 mattresses from you for every store I had. I had two stores at the time. So I want to buy 10 mattresses from each store for foster kids. But I want it at your labor material costs, no profit because we're helping kids, right? And then would you mind donating one each for that? So 10 more for each store. And they said, sure, we can do that. We can make that work. This is a good cause. That's great, and did that. Of course, they never knew we'd have 317 stores in the end, right? So it added up to a lot of mattresses, thousands of mattresses over each year that we would give away. But we went from that to when we bought Sleep Country, we realized that Sleep Country had just run a collection thing in their stores. Well, I had been raised that you don't talk about your charity work, that you just do it, that it's the right thing to do. But by this time, I'd been on enough boards to understand that, granted, you don't talk about the charity work you do, but you talk about the cause that you care about. And so I wanted to make a difference that way. And I figured I had tools that I could use in that I was advertising a ton, right? And so why don't we use the power of the microphone to talk about these kids and what their needs are? So that's when we started our collection of new shoes, new backpacks, new pajamas, things that these kids need that no one understood that they weren't getting. New shoes. People would think at the time, why new shoes? Why do they need shoes? The shoes. Well, they have old shoes, and if you remember back in school, if you're the kid with those old shoes, you were that kid, right? So to feel normal, quote unquote, having a new pair of shoes helps you feel like you're normal, and as they're normal kids, but they couldn't feel that way because they didn't have that tool. When I was in school, Schools supplied all the paper and pencils and all that. Now they don't at all. You know that your kids, it's a so nobody was though buying these things for these kids. So the school supplies are important. So we started with that, and then we grew from there to now. We really have broadened Ticket a Dream to be the number one charity for foster kids in the nation that is nationwide. We're the only real nationwide philanthropy working directly for foster kids that is a nationwide company. There's CASA they're each in each county. There's organizations like that are countywide or statewide or a couple states, but no one is handling all 50 states, and that's what we do. And so what we look at doing is for those that want to help foster kids, we're the person to go to help them and tell you what they need. For instance, we talked about shoes. Famous Footwear is a wonderful company, huge company, and they wanted to do something different. They wanted to make a difference. And so they have been providing us shoes for years now for foster kids. So we get the shoes, and then we have vetted in every state people that are actually on the ground working with the foster kids. So we send it to the agencies in each state, and then they distribute it to the foster kids. So these products go directly out to the foster kids that need them. So that's really, I'm proud of that. We've grown dramatically, serving thousands and thousands of kids over the years. And it's something that we're proud of. Like I said, these kids, one kid enters the foster care system every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, a kid is entering the foster care system. 15,000 of them age out every year. And right now is when that's going to happen. When they get out of high school, they're aging out. 60% of them are going to experience homelessness within that 2 years of this period. 60% of these kids will be homeless. 50% only graduate from high school. Only 50% graduate from high school. Only 3% go to college.
3%. And I remember one of the stats I heard that was also just extremely heart-wrenching was, I think the number was around 70% of inmates in the California penal system had been in foster care.
That's exactly true. So, if you look at the causes that really are concerning to people, homelessness, incarceration, education, teen pregnancy, all of these causes, sex trafficking, all of these issues, foster kids are the center of. And not because they did anything wrong, but because our system has not taken care of them. They don't give them the support they need. Most of these kids have been in and out of at least 3 homes. We know of many, many that I've talked to that have been through as many as 20 homes. So can you imagine growing up, going in and out of a house, not knowing where you're next going to be, the stability that's there? These kids did nothing wrong. They're wonderful kids at the beginning, but then we put them through a system that creates issues. We send them out there at the end after they finish high school, and they're out there alone with no support. You and I had parents that helped us, maybe, or aunt and uncle or somebody that gave us some support when we got out, even if it was a set of pots and pans, we had something. They don't have that. So, we as a country and as human beings need to do a better job of taking care of these kids. And to me, the math is so simple. Spend a little bit of money here, and we can save all the money we're going to pay in the end when we're having to deal with all the repercussions of what we did not do.
And it's also just a gut punch to think that whenever that child turns 18 and is now officially an adult, the foster care homes, I think around at that point, they stop getting paid, or at least, after they graduate from high school. So there's no financial incentive for that foster family to continue housing that child. And so that becomes an emancipated teen. And talk about getting kicked out on the streets when you're 18 and you've been to as many as 20 homes. How do you end up? I mean, I think that's that period of time between 18 and 23, your brain's not even fully developed. You can't even really consider consequences, and you're out there on your own. That gap, that donut hole, is really scary for a lot of people who have gone through this, and there's not a lot of resources.
It's exactly the problem. These kids, there's not a lot of resources. There are, some programs. California has a program, for instance, that if they're going to school or working, they can continue in the system and they actually get some support till 23. However, they've been so burnt on the system that many of them opt to just, they don't want to be in the system anymore because the system has let them down time and time again, that they don't follow through on that. Now, there are great programs that if we can get them connected to, we can get them, like Guardian Scholars, for instance, is at Sacramento State and UC Davis and many other universities in California, which is a program that helps foster kids go to college and gives them that community while they're on campus. So there's programs like that that are out there, but it's getting the child there to understand that is where we need to go next. And we're working hard on that. We've got quite a few of our programs do that we support. So that's something that I value very much, is that education. And so doing that. The other aspect that you and I talked about it, I think, was the extracurricular activities. They don't get to participate in the sports that you and I did because no one's paying the $1,000 that it takes to be in a league, right? They don't get to do dance lessons or any other kind of program, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, because no one is paying for that. So that, to me, is a huge gap in building that well-rounded child and well-rounded adult in the future. Because if you don't learn what success feels like by winning on a team, or what teamwork is like, how do you participate as an employee? If you don't have these tools in your tool belt that you've been taught growing up, it's even harder to make it work when you're out there trying to get a job and trying to keep a job, because you don't have the tool set that other kids had. And so to me, that extracurricular activity is so important to them, to be able to go to camp. We support camps across the country that bring their brothers and sisters back together because they're sent out to different homes. And then the only time they get to see them is at this camp for 1 week. That's the only time they get to see their siblings. And so to me, that's an important part, to feel, they need to feel that they are part of a family. And
That's
to
right.
at least be back with their siblings is very important. So, it's just programs like that to me, are so critical to what we do and what these kids need.
And this all started at Sleep Train. I mean, it all started whenever I don't know what the conditions were, the scenario was, but obviously with your wife being a pediatrician and you all having a focus on helping kids, this has had a legacy impact that, here we are 11 years later, you're still clearly as passionate about it as you ever have been. And you continue to help kids, not only in California, but all over the country now. And just these small things, like I really admire how deep the evaluation has gone on looking at these kids holistically, because even that thing right there, being on the sports team or playing in the band, it's even more expensive than ever to be on sports and to be in these leagues. And if you're not part of something, really, you're not getting those inputs along the way. They're going to help you be somebody that can play on a team or sell mattresses with a team or be part of an ESOP, or join a company. Like, those things matter and they have a compounding effect.
I agree. That's why I think it's so important that we pay attention to this and understand that investing a little money now will make a huge difference in these kids' lives in the future. And that's our golf tournament, still to this day, is one of the most successful golf tournaments out there. This year we raised $550,000 for foster kids this year. So it keeps going. And what I think I feel most proud about is that golf tournament's been going on for 11 years now, and that it was founded by some of our team, came together and said, what can we do? Brian Baxter, who was part of that founding team, that said, what can we do? Let's do a golf tournament. So Mike Lavelle and Brian Baxter and Mike Wilson, they put together this thing. Let's do a golf tournament. I said, okay, we'll fund it. Let's do this. And it's grown to what it is now, to be something very special and that makes a difference. This year, our speaker this year was Luke Woods, Dr. Luke Woods, who is the current president of Sacramento State University, who is a former foster youth, who got to share his story, which was quite an impressive story of where he's come from and where he's been able to make it. And he has such a passion for foster kids and is making a difference at Sacramento State to provide education for foster kids. So it's great. And what makes it so special is that every year our employees come back to work, to volunteer to do that. They want to be there. They come from all over to come back for that one day's event, to be there because they know that it matters and they want to be part of it.
It's incredible. Congratulations on the sustained success of that. And the lives that you've impacted. And again, like you talked about with that delivery driver putting a roof on his mother's house in Mexico, I'm sure there's so many stories about foster kids, the trajectory of their life changing because of this group of incredible mattress people coming together to serve a higher purpose and be part of something bigger than themselves.
Well, and Mark, I'll tell you the other thing that your listeners really should be aware of is it wasn't started out as this, but it became an amazing business tool. And I don't mean to degrade what we did there, but what it did for our business kept our retention was the lowest in the industry, because we kept, is that the right way to say that? People, we kept people, our loss was the lowest in the industry because people liked the culture. But the culture was about a lot. One of it was the fact that our company did something other outside of ourselves, something bigger than ourselves. And it wasn't about, driving our business through our charity. So many people, choose to do charity work by promoting themselves and come see us do this. We did charity because it was the right thing to do. For instance, all of our advertising never said, buy a bed, save a kid, right? It wasn't never that kind of a imagery. Our advertising for sales were completely separate from our promotion of our foster care program. And that identified us to the community as a company that cared about something outside themselves. It wasn't tied to us at all. People would say, why foster kids? They'd always ask, were you a former foster youth? Why are you doing foster kids? And it was just because the need was there.
Yes.
So, we felt that, doing that was the right thing. But from a business standpoint, quite frankly, it grew our business. When you landed in Sacramento, came there, and you got in an Uber or a taxi or whatever to get there, if you ask them about Sleep Train, probably one of the number one, they would say the jingle, or they'd say, oh, they do a lot of work for foster kids. Brand recognition, can you get in a household? If people know your brand and it's because of your charity, who are they going to shop with when they go buy something? Right? They're going to come visit us first, which they did. And they would always tell us, we're here because you do good for our community. So our business grew because we do that. My wife and I have been very blessed, as you know, and we have found that the saying that I've heard before is so true, that the more you give, the more you get. My wife gets very frustrated because we try to give all this stuff away. We try to do a whole lot of good things for other people and do all that, and we keep being blessed with more. And she goes, "Why we're trying to help others and give this all away?" But it's because we're there to do that. So I'm just telling you, if any of the companies out there that are listening, if your company is not doing something specific for somebody other than yourselves, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to grow your culture and your business. We kept people, we kept customers, and we grew our business because of it. So to me, it's a great business tool if you're doing it for the right reasons. But you can't be self-serving in the choice that you make. I also highly recommend going with one charity. I know it's harsh, and it's harsh when you have other charities that you want to support. What we did is the company charity was one thing. Then we had a fund that we would allow for our district managers to spend for their region if they had stuff they wanted to do that was outside of ours. We also allowed all of our employees to have 24 hours of paid time off to go do work in another charity, and it didn't have to be foster kids. So we did do other work, but the company's focus was only one. And it saved me so much time because someone would call and say, hey, can you donate for this? I said, well, does it have anything to do with foster kids? No, but it's this. I understand, but all we do is foster kids. And so I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. It's a great program, but this is what we do. And they couldn't argue with me because they saw what we were doing, right?
Yeah. So it became a filter feature for you. So it saved your sanity and allowed you to really magnify the impact of the work you were doing. Let's go granular for a minute, since we have a lot of mattress retailers and mattress industry people. You said that you separated your advertising and you would have your Sleep Train advertising with the jingle, which I want you to hum it if you can. But also you had your focus in advertising on Ticket to Dream that was separate. What did those spots look like? Let's say if it appeared on TV.
For instance, we would do it would be a drive for a collection, for instance, where we would have we're collecting backpacks. And so we would show kids going to school and backpacks and what they needed and tell why these kids needed their support. So could they bring in, new school supplies for kids, and they bring them into our store and they drop them off. And that's what we were at. That's all we asked is sleep train foster kids. So the branding we got was a sleep train foster kids. That was on the ad, but other than that, there was no mention of a sale, anything like that. Where we'd have a sale ad that would talk about a Memorial Day sale, what we were having, what was on sale, what the programs were, and everything like that. And that was separate. So we kept the two separate completely.
I think a lot of people, and I wrote about this in the book, that it was sort of like the cage framework, community, answers, giving, or experiences. Like pick your focus, whatever your heart is in align with, and that's going to help you sort of go out and tell the community, for example, these are our values. If you share our values, then maybe we're going to be a good fit for you to shop at. And so that tension, I think, is real for a lot of business owners. Do I want to talk about the charity work that I do, or do I not want to talk about it? I think a lot of people, what I've sort of landed on over the years is that, yes, it's great to talk about what you believe in and what you want to have an impact on. Maybe don't share the exact numbers of like, here's how much money Dale Carlsen gave to X charity, but it does help people, just like you were filtering in the right people who are connected to foster kids and filtering out something that may be a distraction or just not a fit. People are going to filter into the consideration set companies that have shared values with them.
Yes, no, actually, that's very true. And I guess where I came to on that, because like you said, I was raised not to talk about your charity work. So I understand that concept. The difference is don't talk about your charity work, talk about the cause. So our commercials would talk about the cause, why these foster kids needed these whatever we were collecting, or we talk about foster care in general, foster kids in general, and what's needed and so forth. So we were educating the public on the needs of these kids, not talking about what Sleep Train does for them per se, other than we're collecting this for you. But it's a difference when you, and that I finally got through that in my head, and so I understand other people struggling with that. But really, if you look about it, if you don't talk about it, no one knows about it, right? That cause doesn't get anything. And we're very blessed in our industry to spend a lot of money on advertising, right? A lot of money that's spent on advertising the mattresses. So use your tools there. We went to all of our ad agent, all of our ad partners, the TV stations, the radio stations, and we asked them to help us with this. So we were able to negotiate a separate package deal for our charity work than we did for ours because it was separate. It wasn't a regular ad. So, they want to help as well. If you can make a program that makes sense. And, over time, and even to this day, we hear from the media folks. I hear from all my media folks that I see how great it was what we did. And we did it way differently than anybody else ever did because we understood media and how to use it appropriately to share the message of a charity as well as help that charity while still doing your own promotional work on the other side.
Let's talk about understanding media for a minute, because the Sleep Train whistle and the jingle became iconic. And clearly you had a team that had creative chops and media buying chops and knew how to negotiate with the media properties. First of all, what's the jingle?
Sleep Train. I can't sing. Your ticket to a better night's sleep. Ding,
Sleep
ding.
Train. I love it.
Basically. Yeah.
And that was on the radio and TV for years, right?
Yeah. Well, I looked at, quite frankly, if you go back to one of the signature things was the train whistle, right? Because we had the train whistle and I wanted that as part of it because, I had learned from, if you look at IBM, they had the first sound bite, right? Had that sound that was there. So, to me, it was so clear that you should have something that rang a bell. And so that did, by having that train whistle, people would know and they would tie it to us over the years because they heard the train whistle, they knew it was a Sleep Train ad. So subconsciously, they may not have heard the ad, but they heard the ad. So it's a very powerful tool to use. And a jingle to me is important. I mean, like you said, you can sing. I have people to this day that'll come up and sing. I get introduced to them and they go, oh, Sleep Train. They'll sing it for me, So, it definitely was out there. But we were also out there all the time with it.
Were there any inflection points from a marketing and advertising standpoint that really shifted you into overdrive with the Sleep Train business? Or was it sort of like, all right, as we got bigger, things changed and the way that we message changed?
No, well, the real inflection point was when I met Rush Limbaugh. So now, mind you, to all you listeners, anybody has different political opinions. This is not politics. This is Rush before the later days. So this is just Rush as a radio startup. He had just literally started his show. So I had two stores at the time, and the account executive for the local radio station came in and said, they got this new guy in the station, needs a bed. Will I take care of him? Well, I was just starting up. I needed every sale I could get. Yeah, bring him in. I'll take care of him. So he came in and he heard my story. He goes, you got to let me go on the air and tell your story. You got such a great story. And I go, I don't have any money. So I don't know how this is going to work. So he said, just let me do it. And so he went on the air and started telling my story. And people came in left and right. And Rush had people liked him, people didn't like him, but it didn't seem to matter. People come in and they say they loved him. People came in and they said they hated him. People came in and said that he was good entertainment. So, but in that process, I learned this is actually the beginning of influential advertising. The influencers of today on media like yours and so forth started with what we did with Rush Limbaugh, because he went on the air. I gave him, here's the rough idea of what we're selling and what we're doing that week. He would go on and talk about it in his own words. I didn't script anything for him. Then I decided he couldn't be the only one that could do it. So then we tried other people, and it grew and grew and grew. Where I have had, and it didn't matter what their political leaning is, because everybody sleeps. That's the best part about our business, is that everybody sleeps. So we would advertise on a more liberal station, we'd advertise on Ross, we'd advertise on every different form, because to me, we could all be happier and get along better if we all slept better. I think that's what's wrong with the world right now. We're not sleeping enough. We need to sell more mattresses, because obviously people are too grumpy to get along. So, but that started it. So we had over 1,000 personalities over the years that have done spots for us from everything, but they would do it in their own words. So that was really a change in how I did advertising. Our radio spots were unique and special, from having a sports jockey talk about us, to a music jockey, to a news person, to, it didn't matter what they were doing. They were telling their listeners how to get a better night's sleep. And that was through us.
And so did that continue all the way through 2014 whenever the business
Oh yeah,
sold?
we were full bore, and I took it into Mattress Firm, and they did it for a while. They still do some of it, I believe. Yeah, but it was, it was phenomenal for us. We also did new things that had never been done before. We were the first ones to sponsor closed captioning. When closed captioning first came out in 1985 or 86, I think it was, we had a radio station or a TV station came to us and said, would you want to put your name on this 5-second little blurb? And I said, how much is it? And it was the right price. I go, sure. And it became, every newscast had it, this closed captioning brought to you by Sleep Train Mattress Centers, your ticket to a better night's sleep. Toot, toot, and so in every newscast. So if you watch the news, you heard our name. So that was something that nobody else had done.
So I relate to the Rush Limbaugh thing, because when I was finishing up college and then I did a master's program, I was a daily talk radio show host. And I did that for 4 years. And of course, at noon, Rush was on because it was an AM station. And then after Rush, I think maybe Glenn Beck came on, and then there was Dave Ramsey. And that's literally where I got my basics of a financial education, was off Dave Ramsey, because as I was prepping for my afternoon show, I was listening to Dave Ramsey. And of course, as you're hearing these guys, you're hearing exactly what you're talking about with these different products and things they're passionate about, putting it into their own words. And then we had DJs up and down the hall that were part of like the country or the pop station that had endorsement deals like with Beauty Rest. And I remember this guy, he had a Beauty Rest deal and he would talk about it in his own words. And apparently it worked quite well then also. So yeah, well, that medium's
really,
huge.
Rush is who started that. He started that, and then it grew. And then that's when, Beck took it on. Everybody else went on from there to be that. And Rush literally came to us and said, the whole reason was he figured that he had been fired from so many jobs prior to that, but he said if he figured that people were buying the station because of him, he wouldn't get fired as easily. So he had us, he had a jewelry store company, and one other person that he started with in Sacramento.
So I didn't realize he was in Sacramento. That's where he was doing a show, because later on he moved to Florida.
Yeah, no, he started in Sacramento. He left Sacramento when he got the gig in New York. So he moved to New York, and when he left town, he said that the people you meet on the way up, same people you meet on the way down, and I'll always take care of you. So he did mine for many, many years until there was a conflict that blew it apart with the people that managed him and so forth. So, but yeah, so that was crazy times, but it was great. And people were going, "How can you let people just say carte blanche?" Especially some of the radio stations. Can you imagine some of the rock radio stations, what their commentary was? Howard Stern did spots for us, and it's unscripted Howard Stern spots for us. So, you can imagine what some of these spots were. I didn't listen to them because they would kind of probably bother me, but they sent people in. And we tracked every sale. That's the other thing. We tracked every sale that came through and what brought them in. So we knew very well what was working and what wasn't, and we could bring that data. We were a very data-based company. So way before data became as used as it is now, we were one of the first ones to computerize, to have data, to track data, to do all that. So we use that data. We'd go back to the TV station, the radio station, saying, "We're paying too much. It's not working," or "It is working, and okay, we can take your increase," type of thing. So,
And you had the data that you could show the TV station, which very few businesses probably collected it and had anything defensible they could put in front of their rep and say, "No,
right.
here it is."
It was a little hard for them to not to look at, and we could share it. We compared it to, here's what the other stations are doing. This is where you rank.
Okay, we got to shift gears a little bit, because we're talking a lot about what works. What didn't work? When were the wheels coming off? Was there anything that you remember like, oh my gosh, it might all fall apart, or this was a total flop?
Well, that's anybody out there that started their own one knows that there's a lot of those years of this might not work. This might, it's the age old thing that I always kept feeling that someone's going to find out pretty soon that I don't know what I'm doing. So, but the Great Recession was one of the biggest ones. I had never taken out a loan prior to right before that. We decided to buy Sleep Country USA, right? And we took out a loan to do so, and I'd never taken out a bank loan before, but everything was going great. This is 2004, 5, 6, right there. Things were going great. Then all of a sudden, so we got this loan, we got their business, it's going well, things are going well. All of a sudden, we started seeing things slow down, and we're going, okay, we're not changing anything. Nothing else is changing. Why are we seeing a slowdown? So we started telling the bank, something is changing in this world, because, as you know, and I think the rest of the mattress people, listeners especially, mattresses are a very clear indicator of the economy. Because if people stop buying mattresses, they're postponing it, right? And that means that they're getting a little nervous and they don't want to spend money. So when we start to see a slowdown in the mattress industry, odds are there's going to be a slowdown in the economy. And so we started seeing that. And, I'd been through enough of them, before that to know that. And we're telling the bank this. We're going, okay, we're seeing this. We're doing this. This is going to be this. Oh, no. It's got to be you. It's got to be you. You're doing something wrong, whatever. And I go, no, it's not. So we look at it. Then all of a sudden things get worse, right? And so we're going, okay, it's worse and it's a problem. Now, mind you, we still could pay our bills. We still were fine. We didn't never ran into anything like that. But we had covenants with the bank. All of a sudden the bank's starting to say, okay, well, you're going to blow your covenant. You're going to blow your covenant. I go, I understand that. I would like to change that. I don't know what I can do to change that. And so we sit down and we talked with them and we worked with them, and they put us into their workout group and all that. So we got to go through that joy, which is no fun. Not a fan of banks, by the way. In the banks I worked with at that time. And we, at one time, and they wanted me to cut advertising. Was one of the number one things they wanted me to do. And I told them, no. I said, have you not read history? History tells us that every time during a downturn, if you cut advertising, it's a death spiral. You cut advertising, you have less sales. You have less sales, you cut advertising. You have less sales, you cut advertising. Pretty soon you're out of business. So I said, I will not cut my advertising. I will not do that. I will renegotiate my advertising, which I had already done. We've got better deals for less money, but I'm not going to cut my advertising because we have to drive business, and our business is driven by advertising. At one point, there's a big heated discussion. We got 3 banks in the room, and we're all talking, and they're telling me I've got to do this. I go, no. And I threw the keys. I picked keys out of my pocket. I threw it across the table. Said, if you think you know how to run this better, here are the keys to the business. Go ahead, you try. And they shut up and said, okay. And they didn't force me to do anything that I didn't think was right to do. And so we got through that, but it was very tough times. I will tell you that one of the most impactful times for me of understanding the power of my employees was that period of time, because I remember after the collapse in October, we had our retreat that January in Reno, of all places, snow and everything. And everybody was cutting retreats, cutting all that out, right? Well, our team sat down and I told them, I said, if there's any time that we need to be in front of our people, it's now. If we cut this and we're not in front of our people, we will lose them. And so, and Mike Dunn, who was my right-hand guy, was brilliant in his analysis of stuff. But Rob Kilgore in particular was an all-star, because Rob put together a presentation for our retreat that blew the socks off of our team. But for me, the moment was when I had to get on stage at the beginning of that retreat, because literally for the first time ever since I had started, I didn't know if we could survive. I didn't have confidence in that we could survive. And I was trying to figure out how I'm going to sit there and stand in front of these people and get them charged up. And I walked up on stage and I looked out and I saw the team that we had. And I saw the power of that room. And at that moment, I knew we had what it took to get through that because of those people in that room. That team was phenomenal. So sorry to get emotional, but it made a huge difference because that changed my mind. Now I was back in, okay, we got this. We got the team. We will make this work. And we did. And Rob made them feel comfortable by explaining, because the problem was that what was happening, no one understood. And there wasn't really in that. So Rob did what we dubbed Robonomics. And so he had a Robonomics presentation that explained to everybody what had happened and why everything was where it was and what the future probably looked like, and that we could get out of this. And it's going to take time. It's going to take, energy to get out of this as a country, as us, but we will get through it. But that got everybody to feel more comfortable with their own personal life, not be afraid, and understand, okay, together we'll get through this. So that was probably one of my biggest moments in my whole career.
Hats off to Rob too for understanding that absent of information, fear becomes the order of the day, because that which we don't know or understand just produces fear.
Exactly.
And so to get up there and like take a swing at it, produce some Robonomics, and to at least give people the input that they needed to start processing not only their own lives, but the life of the business and the health of the business, that I think is such a great lesson for all of us. Like, look at the conditions and what do we need to slow down and explain to people and onboard them into.
Yeah, it's critical thing. Information and being honest and upfront with people is so critical. Rob did a phenomenal job. I mean, as you know, I was blessed to have a great team. My dad told me if I wanted to be successful, surround myself with great people, treat them right, and make everybody successful. And I had the best team, bar none, in the industry. I'm sorry if the rest of you think your team's great, but my team was better. But they were just phenomenal. So very, very blessed that way. And it goes, that honesty goes back to manufacturer, your relationship with your vendors. Because one of the other moments of terror in my life was I had a warehouse manager who left the company, took a new job. I congratulated him, good, enjoy your job. He was moving to Montana, moved. When he moved, all of a sudden I realized when we did inventory, we were $50,000 short in inventory. And this is early on. I did not have $50,000 to spare in lost inventory. And what happened was I made a mistake in that we had our warehouse manager count our inventory and input it into the system. Bad mistake, because he just manipulated the system. He would just change the numbers in the system in order to fit the numbers that were in the inventory now, because he stole the rest. When I got into the business, I thought no one, it's a great business because no one will steal mattresses. Oh no, they're stolen all the time. And what even hurts more is they use your trucks to steal it. It's just that's salt in the wound. But so he was stealing it and selling it off and so forth. And so I realized that within 90 days, I was going to have a cash flow crunch that wasn't going to be able to get through. So I went to every manufacturer I had, including Leggett, and said, okay, here's the deal. This is where I'm at. This is what I owe you. I will promise you that I will pay what I owe you back here off within the next 9 months, and I'll pay every other bill on time. But I need to be able to pay this off over a little bit of time to make sure that I can get everybody paid. But I did that well before I had a problem. And every single vendor said yes. And I paid it off within 6 months. And from that moment on, every vendor knew that if I told them I'd do something, I would do it. And I built a relationship with every vendor of trust and respect that they knew that they could depend on us to do what we said we would do. And they would take care of us as well. So I very much cherish the vendor relationships that we had. We were very blessed to have great people to work with. And my dad gave me one other great piece of advice, and he said, always leave meat on the bone. And his words were, you never grind down to the bottom dollar because your partners need to make profits as well. They need to succeed. So grinding down to the bottom is never the right thing to do. We were tough negotiators. I think everybody out there would say we were, but we never ground down to the bottom.
And for how long did you go out to that warehouse and count every mattress that came in?
We did multiple counts over and over again, making sure we're checking. But my lesson to me was because I took it personally. The times that people stole from me, there's generally people that I had helped and people that I considered friends, and they stole from me. I learned to let that go and to understand that I need to take responsibility for having a system that allowed them to do that. So that it was my responsibility to make sure that I didn't put a system in front of somebody that would allow them to cheat and steal. So, that was my mindset of trying to make it look better. And that's how our company focused. How do we make our company stronger, safer, and protect what we have?
You've mentioned a couple of great lessons from your dad. You brought your dad up a few times. What's his story?
My dad was a CPA, a certified public accountant. He was dead set against me doing this. He said, no, small business fail. Don't do that. My degree was in real estate. Do your real estate thing. Or I worked for Nolan Gamble, who had California Mattress Company. Stick with him and maybe get ownership of his company, but don't open your own company. And my stepmom and him took their first trip out of the country. And in that 2-week period, I bought a truck, leased some space, and opened my first store. Actually, it would be, how would it be? 35 years ago, 40 years ago, Tuesday.
40 years ago too. Was it called Sleep Train right out of the gates?
Yep.
Where'd the name come from?
Sleep Train was about, I wanted a recognizable name. Dale's Mattress Store just didn't have the ring to it that I wanted. And I wanted something that was memorable. And to me, I'd always liked trains. I thought trains were very cool. And I thought it was something that kids would find interesting and so forth. So we had a big train painted on our truck that my roommate did, because I was out of college and my roommate painted on the side of the truck. And I wanted kids to say, Mommy, train. And Mommy would look and see Sleep Train and see our truck, right? So I wanted something that was memorable and that people, back in those days, the yellow pages were still important, right? And so I wanted something that stood out in the yellow pages instead of everybody's mattress store. Sleep Train Mattress Store was different. So
you could have went with AAA mattress and been right at the front of those yellow pages.
You're right. Yeah.
That's cool. That's a great. I mean, I like that there's like some strategy and thought behind it. Like, yeah, get the kids to pay attention, and it's fun, and it's hey, I'm coming from a kid that comes from multi-generation railroad family, so grandpa and dad, and I think trains are cool too.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So back to my dad, he was dead set against it. When he came back, he wasn't happy with his youngest son's decision, but he, gave me that advice and he told me I was on my own. I go, I know that. But, to be fair, he was a CPA. So he did do my books, until right before he passed away. So wow. It was very, very special from that part. I, got to build a relationship with my father over that, and In the end, fortunately, he was able to see the success of the company. So that was great. Matter of fact, it was an interesting thing. Anybody that's gone through death of a parent and so forth. He was in hospice at our house, and he had been in a coma for a couple days, and I was right in the middle of selling Sleep Country selling Sleep Country at the or my no, I'm sorry, selling my Northwest stores um, to um, um, to Fenway to buy. We're in the negotiations, and he's dying at home, and I'm in the middle of negotiations, and which actually my dad would appreciate. By the way, I did use to my advantage, because every time they'd get say, I said, look, I'm done. This is what it is. My dad's dying at home. Are we doing this deal or not? What could you say at that point? And you're on the other side of the call, right? But when we signed the paperwork, we had made the deal, and my brother wanted to celebrate. I had all my family at my house, my sisters and my brother. My brother wanted to celebrate. He said, Scott, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. So he and I went in there, and we told my dad, and he woke up, and a tear came down. It was like he was waiting for that to happen. He just wanted to know that everybody was good, and that it had gone through. So it was very cool. Very cool.
That's a special story. Wow. And your dad got to see the success of the company. That, to me, did he ever look at you and be like, Dale, I can't believe this is working?
Yeah, right. He was, well, he had known it, and my dad was one of those guys that never would really tell you, he's proud of you, but you knew he was, type of thing. So in the end, he was proud, you could see. And now, mind you, he passed in 2000. So, he didn't get to see all the success, but he got to see enough of it to see, what had happened, at that time.
You could see where it was trending.
Right.
Well, we're talking about, something that was at the end, with your dad seeing the success, and maybe not eventually where it went. But let's go back to the beginning for younger people. I know you're really passionate about kids. You're, I'm sure, a mentor to those that are entrepreneurs. What do you see out there today that maybe needs to be communicated to the young entrepreneurs, or maybe there aren't enough entrepreneurs? What's your read on the landscape, and what would you say to folks that are young and maybe getting started?
One, it's a whole new world out there than it was when I started, and they should harness that power. There is so much support for entrepreneurship out there to do something different, to do something new. Katie and I help fund an entrepreneurship center at Sacramento State University, where we have new entrepreneurs come in. They can learn. They can actually go to the program if they're even not going to Sacramento State. So get connected. If you're new, get connected with an entrepreneurial ecosystem within your community. The ecosystems, when many of these communities are so strong and they're supportive, and you have that community, and they have people that will talk to you and give you feedback and help you to see how to get through the different channels and so forth. But really engage yourself in the entrepreneurial economic or ecosystem that's out there, because they're fantastic in different communities like ours. Like Sacramento has a great one.
Okay, so let's go a little deeper. Dale Carlsen has to start something in the mattress and sleep space, has to start a business today. What do you do?
Well, first, I think, the first thing I would do is try to figure out where, to me, entrepreneurship is basically finding a need and finding a solution. Right? So like when I started, I don't really consider opening Sleep Train an entrepreneurship venture, although it was. It was in the fact that at the time, all the mattresses were being sold at department stores and furniture stores, and there was no training of the sales staff to do that. They were selling pots and pans one day and mattresses the next day. So they really didn't have any training to help sell that. And so I saw that opportunity. I also saw the opportunity that it took 6 to 8 weeks to get a mattress when I got in the industry in 1985. I thought, that's crazy. People don't go shopping for a mattress that they need in 2 months. They need one tonight because their backs hurt, they're moving, they got thrown out of their house, whatever the reason is, they need a new mattress tonight. And so we started with our same day delivery. Our same day delivery was innovative at the time. And when I gave my keys to my truck to the customer and said, hey, take it home and bring my truck back, my insurance company and lawyer said that's not a good idea. So I had to stop that and actually hire delivery people.
You're like, I didn't tie the knot though. They tied the knot.
They tied the knot, right? Not my fault. But nobody, so being able to deliver the same day was something, unique, that was different than what other people were doing. Our customer service was way beyond what the industry had at the time, and so forth. So finding what it is. So if you're looking in the mattress and you're looking in the furniture industry, where are the holes? What's being done wrong? And how do you do it better? Or what's not being done? And how do you create that? The use of AI is going to be phenomenal in our industry. If we can just, harness it for good, and use it appropriately. I mean, there's just great things that people can do that I'm just so excited for that generation to be able to just expand with what they can achieve through AI.
The creative unlock with AI is just absolutely amazing. I mean, I've been teaching Mattress executive teams for 2 years now. It started, we had a private group, it was like a mastermind group, and I started teaching it then. And now I've flown out all over the country to corporate headquarters to teach this, because there are some fundamental skills that you can learn that take this thing from being a toy to a real, like, X tool, or a X tool in many cases. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Like, the businesses that are going to get built, like the creativity you can unlock, the efficiency and productivity, the automation, even just this idea of agents, deployed and doing things on your behalf. It's a beautiful, magical new world.
It's crazy. I think Matt Anderson went for your class and learned from you, or you've worked with him, because he shared with me some of the stuff, and it's phenomenal what stuff that you can do, and to harness that will be phenomenal. Now, getting through some of the, I guess one of the challenges, how do you get people to open their mind to it that are, our industry is so entrenched. How do you open the mind of people that have been in it that haven't used it? And how do you get people to see that there's value there, and to not be afraid of it, but to harness it, like you said? Have you come in and share with them how they can use this to improve their company, improve their bottom line, quite frankly?
I think that's sort of the message that I've thrown out to people is, for us, the language that really resonates is are you going to make more money? Are you going to have to hire fewer people? Is it going to, increase your profits, reduce, human error along the way, do jobs that nobody wants to do anyway, like all the different systems and reporting. There's so much that you can just compress down and get rid of. Just like Sleep Train was doing early on. I mean, you were bringing on business systems and you're looking at data. And the thing about data that's tough sometimes is actually doing something with that data. We have this powerful machine that can synthesize it into something meaningful in moments. And that's going to be the new skill. I think part of the new skill is vision and taste. Do you have a vision for what you can build from these toys that become tools? And do you have good taste? Because I think it's going to be a long time before AI can be like, yeah, this is the experience I want to create, and this is the flavor that I want to put into the experience.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think it's a must-have tool to have these days. That you've got to understand it. You got to. I don't. I'm just getting to the surface of it, now. And it's one of the things actually in our office. That's a conversation that we just had. Is we need to do that next step. Really,
well, hey, quick plug here. I actually do have a free webinar with our partners at Podium at noon Central on June 18th. So it's completely free, and it's going to be focused like on mattress retailers. But everything we're going to talk about in this first webinar, it's like one of 3, is going to be around this idea of how do you create the world's most powerful assistant in your pocket. And I'm going to take you through sort of the fundamental skills and like how to really get it out of this idea of like tinkering and toying with it, to like making it your executive assistant that knows all of the internet's information, wants to please you, never sleeps, never gets fatigued, and has all these domains of expertise. Like, it's right there in your pocket, and I'm gonna help you unlock it.
That sounds great. I have to check my calendar to see if I'm around, but that'd be awesome.
Thank you. That'd be cool. I'd love to have you.
Great
well, Dale, this has been, speaking of love and have, this has been like one of the just highlights of my year. And I've known you for many years, and I have to show you something real quick and see if you recognize it. Do you recognize this? You may not, but
go ahead.
I remember.
Describe it to me. Yeah, I can.
It's a lock, and it's I ordered all these locks from India, and the very first dream camp that I did that had like intention behind it was in Sacramento, and Brian Baxter was nice enough to host us. And as part of the experience that we did, you might remember, I had everybody with a postcard when they arrived. And the postcard said, welcome to Dream Camp. You are the key. And it had a key on it. And so what we did is everybody had to go find something on the property that was locked up. And so there were only 9 of us. So there were 9 locks, but you didn't know which key went in which lock. But eventually everybody that brought their key unlocked the locks. And there in front of them, there was $500 in cash with instructions to do something with this cash that makes you feel warm. Otherwise, at midnight, it's going to burn. And there was a book of matches. And everybody put their heads together. And it was like Matt Anderson and Baxter and all these guys, Ryan Graven. And they were like, what do we do with this? And they go, we should give it to Ticket to Dream. And everybody started throwing in more cash on top of the $500. And so Brian called you, and he couldn't get through to you. And he thought Dale could be in Hawaii for all we know. And about 30 minutes after we got to the restaurant, you texted him back. You're like, oh, I was getting my haircut. I'm right around the corner.
I remember that. You're at the farmhouse.
Yeah, we were at the farmhouse and had an amazing dinner. And you showed up, and we got to, give you a little bit of money to go toward Ticket to Dream. And I was just like, my heart was full that night, and you had so much to do with it. Just what you started, what you gave us the ability to give to, and I'll appreciate that forever. So you've been a part of my journey, and that was our very, very first Dream Camp. Nobody paid for it. After that, we finally had our first Dream Camp where people paid for it.
That's right. No, that was such a special night for me because I wasn't expecting anything. I thought it was just a chance to say hi and have a glass of wine with you guys, and then all of a sudden you're giving us the money for a Ticket to Dream. And it was a very special night. So I remember the story once you said about it. I just didn't tie the lock to it, but yeah, that was a great idea, by the way. Great idea.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun. And, I always wanted to create these experiences where there was like a slow reveal and there was mystery involved and magic involved, and people connected on a deeper level because of the experience that they shared. So it's been a joy for us.
Experiences are something special, and that's one of the things. Just a short plug too for Ticket to Dream, if you would. If anybody wants that experience of doing a backpack build, putting backpacks together for foster kids, putting bikes together for foster kids, these are all things we can facilitate for companies all across the country. So it's an opportunity to give back, team build, and have that experience together and making a difference. That's a huge opportunity for people if they're looking for that. Also, if anybody wants to add us to their POS for donations, we'd be glad to take that. And any way we can help. If you have product that you want to distribute, let us know. So anything we can do to help foster kids, we're here. If you have an idea, if you want to throw something at us, please just reach out.
And what's the best way to reach out? Is there a URL, like a website?
Yeah, go to tickettodream.org.
Tickettodream.org. Okay, we'll be sure to link to it on the FAM too. So if you watch this on thefam.com, we'll have that information there as well. And by the way, if you are watching this on YouTube, a lot of people do, I have a scratch on my nose, and that's from my puppy. I think I told you this earlier, but I look like I've been in a bit of a prize fight. But he scratched me, and it drew blood. And we were playing on the bed, and he immediately went down in this like submissive position, like, "Oh my gosh, Dad, I'm sorry."
Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I actually couldn't see it. I saw it when we first started, but now it's so you did good.
Well, and we were talking about animals at the very beginning. I did want to close the loop on that. Like, you were in the Galapagos recently, and you did swim with marine iguanas, and with you saw a hammerhead shark in the water below you. So I'm glad I have the scratches and you don't.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. If anybody hasn't been to the Galapagos, put it on your bucket list. It is a must do. Just a phenomenal place to see. Each island is different. There's different creatures on each island, different environment on each island. Take a small boat around, the little, like ours, we had 8 cabins on the boat that we were on. So highly recommend it.
Amazing. And you are amazing, Dale. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story. You and your entire team at Sleep Train, your entire Sleep Train family, which continues to get together. It just shows the power of the culture and the connection that you built, the connection not only among each other, but to your community. You're an amazing man. We're so grateful to have you in our industry. And I'm so grateful to have had you on the FAM podcast.
Well, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor.